Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. I am so excited for you to hear from our amazing guest today. We're going to be talking about culture as an operating system, and leading workplace transformation and the energy transition era, which is hot and heavy. So welcome to the show, our special guest, Sandra Guerra. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, PhD, MBA, SPHR, SHRM SCP, BCC. You are on fire.
Yeah, well, I'm a lifelong learner, that's for sure. I'm dedicated to continuously develop and learn and make sure I have everything I need in my toolkit to support.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm definitely, on fire for sure. You're an executive HR leader and culture and workforce transformation strategist working at the forefront of the energy transition industry. That's not busy at all right now, is it?
Not at all. Of course, it is exploding. And I think I was sharing with you a little bit prior to us coming onto the podcast that it is probably the most I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. The explosive growth that I'm seeing, that I'm experiencing in the energy industry is like no other that I've ever seen. I've been in healthcare, hospitality, entertainment technology, right? And even in aerospace, and none of them had this type of growth. As a matter of fact, what you typically see is the complete opposite. Times in seasons where organizations are cutting back and holding back on hiring and really reevaluating where they're going with the business. That is not what I'm experiencing at Siemens Energy. And I believe that that's also the case across the energy industry. I believe my colleagues would echo that sentiment, and we probably could have a couple glasses of wine together on what we're experiencing.
Absolutely. And it's one of the times that you even, with your competitors, you're actually like, okay, let's share some tips and tricks here.
That's right. And actually we have a big week. It's called Sarah Week, where we are in Houston. It is the energy conference to go to. And for the first time, they're expanding it to a CHRO pathway where executive HR leaders are coming together to talk about the challenges that we're facing.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's a huge, large scale industry disruption, right?
Yes, completely disrupted everything that we can imagine. And I was talking with some students at UCF about how do you plan and prepare for something like this? And it is not an easy thing to plan and anticipate, because when you've never seen anything like this, you don't even believe it's possible.
Wow, that's amazing. I know that I wanted to kind of focus a little bit on culture. You specialize in building leadership, workforce, and culture system that accelerate business transformation in these complex global industries that are also very, very big on safety, right? So energy and industrial sectors, huge on safety, critical environments. So let's just jump in. And, I've heard you say that culture is not a program, it's an operating system. What does that mean in practice?
It means that exactly that. There are so many parts and pieces that contribute to culture that cannot be underestimated. You start with the cultures and the principles of the organization and what matters to the business. But then you have to be able to put the structure in place with policies, processes, and practices that support what it is that you want to do. And from there, when we think about the culture piece, communication is a big point of that. You have to be able to communicate openly with across the business in a place that feels safe, that they are embracing what the core values and principles are, and encouraging the right dialogue and the feedback mechanisms to make sure that when something isn't working, that surfaces and leaders are able to act on that to clear the pathway to the challenge. And I think that that's important. And then you have to really also consider the modeling and the behaviors, the leadership behaviors, right? We've talked about leadership development, and that is a key piece as well. You cannot underestimate how important your learning programs and platforms are to infuse your culture, your core values and principles, to make sure that you are living them day in and day out. It is a starting point for language. It's a starting point for behavior and understanding what we believe, how we're aligned, what targets we're reaching for. And then also, you need to be able to adapt and evolve. And when we think about that, I back in my day in hospital healthcare time, I picked up a good skill set. I think it's a great skill set that I have in my
What's that? What's that?
It's the Lean Six Sigma practice. Really being able to assess what's happening in your business is key, especially when you're going through and you're evolving as an organization. So constantly being able to evaluate, what are your core processes? Are they effective? How do we make them more effective and efficient so that you can eliminate waste? Those are important pieces to help with this operating system that I'm talking about when we talk about culture. And then we also need to continuously monitor engagement of our employees, the health and well-being of our organization. So we do that through employee engagement surveys and cultural leadership surveys to see how we're trending with this, and that we're constantly working at refining and improving the way that we behave, the way that we think, new perspectives, new dynamics, and making sure that as we are adjusting to changes, that we're aligning all of those things. So it is very much an operating system. It cannot play one culture is not just
one and
strategy
done
on paper.
Yeah, right. It needs to set the philosophical tone and connect the culture, the everyday activities to the
That's
business execution. I have some statistics here. This one's from Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends, that organizations with strong cultures aligned to strategy are 3.7 times more likely to achieve top performance outcomes. That's huge.
That's huge. It is huge. And you see that definitely makes a difference in different businesses when you see stakeholders or shareholders are willing to continue to purchase more stock and become greater investors into the company that you're in. And this is important, and it can't be understated that strong cultures lead to performance.
Yeah, it really does. And it's so easy to say, but it's so hard to actually implement, because you need everybody on board with the culture, which means you need to train them, you need to develop them, you need to hold them accountable when they're going in the wrong direction. And not everybody gets it because of whatever, their background, their education, their experience. So a lot of that falls on not just HR, but all leaders. And that's so important. Another survey that I was reading, the PwC Global Culture Survey, said that, this one kills me, only 23% of executives say their culture is fully aligned with their actual business strategy. Yikes.
Yeah, I think it's hard to maintain for a long period of time. It is scary. It is a harsh reality, but I think that's more true in organizations that don't review their strategy regularly and challenge their cultural values and norms. I think organizations that do this cyclically, every 3 to 5 years, are really making sure that does this still feel right? Does this still make sense? If we think about how AI has been disrupting
Everything.
everything, you can see the evolution. When we go back, AI goes way well before ChatGPT, right? So
Right.
when we start to see the evolution from where we started, when we first started with even our iPhones, and see how we went from a BlackBerry world to an iPhone world to I'm sure you remember the little rolling ball on the, I'm dating myself, but all of those parts and pieces required changes in the way people think. And it may even actually change your values as an organization, because where you may have been happy with where things are, it may challenge the organization to say, hey, we need to be more innovative. Innovation needs to be one of our top values. It may not have been.
Exactly.
Motorola may not have had it as one of their, but I guarantee you that was a lesson that they learned very quickly, right? That they needed to evolve the way that they structured values within the organization to drive those behaviors to continue the innovation and the advancement.
I
So
love
I would say, yeah, I would say, oh my goodness, I feel for the companies that don't monitor this frequently. But if you don't do that, that's exactly the type of percentage you're going to fall in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about, it's about changing identity. Like you said, the company values, and let's face it, company values, AI or not, they change because the world changes and how we react. But in the energy transition industry, organizations aren't like yours, aren't just changing strategy, they are changing their identity. Now, how do leaders such as us or executives, the C-suite, anybody, whoever you call leaders, how do we guide everybody else through that kind of identity shift?
I was thinking about that quite a bit. And again, almost it's an operating system. There are so many parts and pieces. It needs to be done from every angle, from every direction, from the leadership down, from the employees up. And what I mean by that is it starts with how we're communicating what we're doing. Do the leaders clearly articulate the vision for their employees so that they can align to the direction that it's moving? Do they understand when you're making a statement about what's happening in the world around us, that that's exactly what we're telling them we want them to do? Come along with us. We're evolving with this.
Right.
And I can say the example that I have is we talked about the great energy transition. And again, you have to look at all of the different environmental factors that impact how business runs. And politically speaking, when the energy transition was being discussed, we were in a different administration.
Mm-hmm.
And sustainability was a number one driver in the way all businesses were evolving for quite some time. And as the administration changed, and at the same time, it was a perfect storm. New administration, exploding technologies with AI,
Yep.
the demand that these companies that are creating chips that help us do the power of AI, and what that means for an energy company like ours to be able to provide the service that the world needs in order to make that a reality. That is where the explosion comes from. So you think, oh, AI and a new administration wouldn't make that much of a change. It made a significant change. It went from talking about strict sustainability to talking about the future of the way that we think, the way that we work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's really going back to where you were saying, like, leaders, managers, really, really making sure that employees understand what's going on. And in fact, there's a study, Gartner Change Management Study, shows that employees who understand the purpose behind change are 4 times more likely to be engaged during the transformation. I mean, when I read that, I was like, well, duh, right? But, we really have to break it down to the fact that executives aren't always connected to the front line, and they need to be somehow, some way, right?
That's true. And an example that I can give of how that's done in my organization is we actually have leaders visit all of our sites, visit customer sites. They do videos and they say, here, I'm here at this customer site and this is what we're working on. Let me tell you the exciting things that we're doing. Another post may be, oh, we're over here implementing this big initiative that we've been working on, and this is going to power blah, blah, blah communities and so forth. So being able to have a strong communication strategy is also another key thing in order for this all to happen, for them to understand, for them to say, yes, I'm aligned to where we're going.
Right.
It's not just enough for the leader to say, here's our strategy. Do you believe it? No, they've got to see it. They have to see how people feel about it. They have to trust that it's real. There's so many parts and pieces to that.
Yeah, it's like the psychological and cultural dimensions of change management. So you need to have more than just firefighters there putting out fires in HR and marketing and business development and leadership development. You need to really truly develop everybody to communicate, like you just said. And you and I both know that communication is probably the number one problem in the world. And so that's putting a lot onto companies and onto human resources, right?
Mm-hmm. True. And I do believe human resources takes a strong weight bearing load, but I do believe that your comms and marketing teams also play a big role. Your operations and your leaders all play a role. If we find that HR is the main driver, it's seldom successful. Yeah, it really needs to be the business that drives it.
I completely agree with that, because if it's only one department or one division, then that means that you're not all aligned. There's a research project, McKinsey and Company Transformation Research. Their statistics are that roughly, this is another one that kills me, 70% of transformation initiatives fail, often due to cultural resistance rather than strategy flaws. And like you said, the cultural resistance is usually because of lack of communication and everybody's not on the same page.
True. It can be. It could also be deep-seated behaviors and beliefs about what the company should be. Again, them not aligning to the evolving
culture.
Yeah,
absolutely. So in global industrial environments, performance, safety, and well-being can feel like very competing priorities. How do you design workforce systems that balance these things, performance, safety, and employee well-being?
Well, luckily, HR doesn't have to do it all.
Yay!
Yay. I know. And it's easier to say in large organizations because you have more resources to sustain the need that you have. For example, the way that it's done in energy, or at least in my organization, we have a body that's called EQS, which stands for it's the quality arm of the business, right? The quality, and there's also health and safety, EHS, health and safety, and those two tend to be grouped together and supported under the same umbrella. So they take a lot of what needs to be the safety approach. Why? Because they know the technicality of what we do when we're out in the field, when we're in our manufacturing locations, what needs to be done, what's a hazard, what's not a hazard. So we rely heavily on EQS and EHS to protect us through rigor of processes and auditing of those processes to see that we are meeting those needs. And in addition, that same group, just coincidentally, also manages mental health, because a lot of the challenges that we're having, especially, and I have to say this because it's probably not even really thought about much. Our technology world has really played a number on our mental health and well-being. People have become addicted to their cell phones, to constant dopamine addiction with scrolling and videos and nonstop stimulation. And that's played a role. I believe it's played a role in our mental health at work because it carries on with us. And so we have to do much more for mental health than what we used to 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know how to quantitatively tell you about that because it's actually the way that we measure it is more by business area. But truthfully, we're seeing more issues in employee relations related to mental health and well-being. And it's a constant concern. What are we doing? Are we doing enough? And are we the priorities are competing between performance and safety and mental health, right? So
overall well-being,
overall well-being. And a lot of times someone's mental health could actually put other people at risk. So because of that, we are put into situations where we may have to remove them from certain work environments because it's not safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Gallup actually came out with some research, Gallup's workplace research, and said that high employee well-being is linked to 23% higher profitability and 18% higher productivity. So boom, right there. If you're focusing on a strong safety culture, if you're focusing on a strong mental health culture and employee well-being, you're already leaning towards more profitability and more productivity. So in the end, the money and the time spent, it's a win-win. But I think many companies just can't get out of their own way, or they might just be stuck and they don't know where to start. So listening to podcasts like this and doing training and reaching out to experts like yourself is where they can start. So,
shareholders are also very interested in your safety numbers.
Yes, right.
It's super important that we have evidence that we're working on constant improvement or towards targets that are zero harm based. At least in my line of work, that is super important. Maybe not all culture, not all industries have the same level of safety concerns in terms of high risk areas based on the type of work, but it's still very important to shareholders, and they are asking and they want to know what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's one thing of a workers' comp claim that, could be go on for life if somebody's crushing a machine or something like that. But on top of that, it's more about, well, if we have less safety issues, then again, higher profitability, higher productivity, but it would make it a lot easier to recruit, right? To say, oh yeah, I want to work for a company that's going to protect my well-being, physical and mind, my mental well-being. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because I don't think that ever comes up when we're interviewing people. What's your safety rate? I think candidates are not necessarily looking at those things. I believe there are some that do, but I don't think that that's your average employee.
You know what, though? If it was all over the news that you were having, they would know and they'd be like, no, thank you. So I do think like in their brain somewhere, they're like, okay, I'm not going to go to that company because there's all over the news of all the accidents they're having. So I haven't heard anything about news over here, so I'm going to go that way. So I really do think some people are, but you are right. And especially if somebody's desperate for a job or they just want to be in the, most popular company or the top company that's going to pay them the most, they may not be worried about that. But I could tell you if I was a candidate and I was going into an interview and I was told like, these are our safety records, I'd be like, wow, they actually care about me. I may look at it in a different way and not even realize it.
Yes. And I do believe that is true. And I do believe that people want to work in a safe place. That is a concern of theirs. Does it show up in the interviews? Not typically. However, it does show up when people are working for you every single day.
Yeah.
It matters to employees that we care about safety, that we're educating them, that we're challenging our existing processes when something does not look or feel safe. And I do know that that is important for retention for sure. Do I
Yeah.
see it as a number one driver for hiring? Not typically, but that's based on the interviews that I sit in.
Yeah,
And I don't
absolutely.
do a lot of them anymore at the field, level, or at the manufacturing level. I have leads that manage that, but yeah, every now and then you do find someone that says, "Are you guys safe?" And
Yeah, absolutely.
we are proud of the fact that we do a pretty good job of keeping our people safe.
Good, good. Again, folks, just remember though, safety is connected to profitability and
Yes,
productivity. And if you have a board or just executives are looking at those numbers, they are going to care about it. So
they do
for
care.
our listeners who are wearing the HR hat, that is something you should be bragging about
That's
and
right.
or fixing if there's some issues. All right,
Yeah.
one more question that I do have is about, about building organizational resilience. So resilience, it's kind of become a buzzword.
Yes.
What does true organizational resilience look like from a leadership and a cultural perspective?
The simplest way for me to define resilience is an organization's ability to continue to thrive through disruptive events.
Yeah. It really is true. And in fact, I pulled a stat on disruption. I swear we're completely aligned today. There is a PwC Global Risk Survey that said only 30% of organizations actually feel prepared for future disruptions, despite increasing volatility across all industries. So, how do we prepare for disruptions? Just maybe on the HR side.
Sure. There's several things that are characteristics of a resilient organization. Definitely agility, being able to, navigate through these changes. But you also have, does your organization have a learning orientation? Do they have clear ways that people learn, that they're able to seek information if they need it? Do they have the right mindsets in place? You also have, again, employee engagement plays a big role in being resilient. The more engaged your workforce is, the more resilient they tend to be because they come together to solve
Mhm.
these problems. Strong relationships in an organization are critical because it's through relationship that people are able to work through the challenges and support one another through crisis. And then do you
Right.
have a plan if there's a crisis? Do you
Right.
have proper crisis management? So, and then of course you always want to consider the robustness of your organization. Do you have the right systems and resources in place to allow you to be able to handle these changes as they're going and they're happening? So I would say those are the characteristics, but then how you do it, you have your leadership team. They are the ones that foster the trust. They're the ones that are providing the encouragement for the innovation. They're the ones that are helping and guiding through the transition of change. So if you want a resilient organization, you don't just need great and engaged employees, you also need a leadership team that is strong and capable of managing through these transitions.
Right. And they also need to be a high trust leadership team.
High
Com-
trust.
yeah, companies with high trust leadership cultures are 2.5 times more likely to outperform peers during crises. And so that's from the Edelman Trust Barometer. And it's just so important because what trust means to me and you might be something different to a different level. So folks,
That's right.
lean into training your leaders and making sure they understand what your cultures are, what trust means in your organization. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much. I have a question
Thank
for you,
you.
a
Sure.
personal question, Sandra. What's up next? Any more certifications? You have so many already added to your name.
Oh, one more, maybe two. I mean, really, it's more the next level of some certifications that I have. But really, the one I'm working on right now is the NACD directorship certification. It is for the credentialing of corporate directors. It prepares you to be able to sit on a board, to be a solid board member.
That's awesome.
And to know what the shareholders want and need in the leadership of that board.
I love it. How can our listeners connect with you?
I'm always available through LinkedIn. So
I'll make sure that
Sandra Guerra at link, at the you do the normal LinkedIn and then / and Sandra J. Guerra will take you directly to my page. And yes, I always welcome people reaching out for chats or thought partnership, any of it.
Excellent. I will make sure her LinkedIn link is in the podcast notes. Thank you so much for all of this amazing information. It's got me rejuvenated to help my clients and focus even more on culture, trust, and values. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I hope this podcast has been beneficial and helpful to you. Feel free to share this and listen on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify Podcasts, or directly on the Aurora Training Advantage website. Take care, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Take care, Sandra.
Take care.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.